people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Newly crowned WBO welterweight champion Sandy Ryan took to her social media and stated, "A lot of fights recently with the best versus the best in their three divisions. Come on, J.D. Mack, otherwise known as Jessica McCaskill. Let's get it on for the fans and all the belts."
It's only right. There are only two champions at welterweight, Sandy and Jessica.
Initially, Jessica was supposed to be fighting Ivana Habazin in defense of her three remaining alphabet titles, but Ivana Habazin had other plans. She decided to stand in for Cecilia Brækhus after Cecilia dropped out of the Terry Harper fight, the fight that took place this past weekend. Terry won the fight.
And Jessica's off the hook. She doesn't have to fight Ivana Habazin anymore, I don't think.
She can stay the course. This only accelerates the plan to put Jessica McCaskill in the ring with Sandy Ryan, because we know more or less that's what the plan was. Let Jessica rebound off the loss to Chantel Cameron with Ivana Habazin, and if she wins, make the fight with Sandy. Well, now you get to skip that step.
You don't have to fight Ivana anymore.
You can fight Sandy Ryan straight away if they make the fight. The goal for Jessica McCaskill is to fluster Sandy in all the ways that Erica did in their initial meeting, in their first fight. Erica won the first fight with Sandy, Sandy won the second.
And in the first fight, Erica took it to Sandy Ryan. Unafraid of the bigger, younger fighter, she flustered her with activity mid-range to inside. Jessica McCaskill, she's a mid-range to inside fighter with a good overhand right and a good engine.
She might have looked a bit lethargic in the Chantel Cameron fight, but don't forget that the Cameron fight was down there at 140 pounds, a weight that Jessica hadn't made in years. At this point in the juncture, I think 147 is a healthier weight for her. And at that weight where this contest would take place, keeping the fight mid-range to inside favors the smaller fighter. That's Jessica. That range doesn't favor the taller, longer fighter that may need more room to work. Long arms, they can't shorten up their punches the same as the shorter fighter with the shorter arms. At that range, Jessica would have the advantage. That's what Jessica has to do. Try to do. Crowd Sandy Ryan. For Sandy, it's the opposite. For Sandy, she's got to create space, beat those feet,
set traps,
time Jessica's entry into the pocket and catch her at the front door. Catch her coming in, easier said than done. Jessica has a very awkward style that's not always pleasing to the eye, though in the ring, it's very hard to deal with.
It's been effective for her most of the time.
Erica Faria's fights are a prime example where Sandy Ryan needed 2 fights to get 1 win over Erica. Jessica fought that same Erica Farias twice years before and beat her comprehensively twice.
2 times.
There's no sense in trying to reinvent the wheel with Jessica McCaskill. She's a pressure fighter that applies pressure through and through, and for this fight, she needs to stay in character, whereas Sandy's got a mean streak, just like Jessica, but she also has a tactical advantage over Jessica. Sandy Ryan is best described as a boxer-puncher.
Boxer-punch is best described as having the best of both worlds, the pure boxer's fundamentals with the pressure fighter's spike.
Nastiness. For this fight, she would need to be more the boxer than the puncher. You don't want to sell out with the shorter fighter, trading punches mid-range to inside. That's what costed her the Erica Farias fight the first time, and I think she learned her lesson.
Does this fight happen?
Kind of think it does, because Jessica's options at that weight really are limited to matchroom fighters. You could do a fight with Sandy, or maybe you defend the titles that you do have, the titles you still have against Terry Harper
down the line.
Although the problem with that is that would take longer. That's a fight that would take longer to make than this fight, because Terry just fought this past weekend. Do you really want to wait around for her?
Natasha Jonas's opponent hasn't been named yet. What about fighting Natasha?
Natasha Jonas is set to make her next ring appearance on the undercard of Shields versus Cruz DAZN.
What if you move up the junior middleweight for a Jonas fight? If you win, you stay up there. If you don't, you go back to welterweight, no consequence.
Because you're still a champion there. I think those are the 3 best options for Jessica McCaskill at this time, though the easiest fight to make.
The easiest one is the Sandy Ryan fight, because Sandy's available. She's a champion at Jessica's weight.
They could do it over the summer. The only caveat is, what is Rick Ramos going to want for that fight? Is he going to drive a hard bargain? Because while he's driving that hard bargain, Jessica's not fighting.
Not fighting and not getting any younger. She already missed out on the Habazin fight.
Can they really afford to wait? There's a distinct possibility that Ryan versus McCaskill happens, though it will take some doing.
See if they get it done.
Men's lightweight news. Gervonta Davis's trainer Calvin Ford has named Devin Haney as the fight he wants next for Tank, which would have the undisputed WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO world lightweight titles on the line. He said that Isaac Cruz rematch is possible alternative.
Of course it is.
Irrespective of who I think or who you might think Gervonta Davis will actually end up fighting next, this is a fairly simple situation. If Gervonta Davis is intended to be the biggest name at or around lightweight, then the onus is on him to make Devin an offer. And Devin Haney, he just fought.
He's free.
He just took care of one of his mandatory challengers in Vasyl Lomachenko. Gervonta Davis is intended to be another, that if Gervonta Davis wants him, he can get him.
In more ways than one.
One way is by way of the WBA. If Gervonta Davis petitions the WBA to order the fight between him and Devin, then Devin has to fight him.
Or forfeit the title.
It's one way, and another way is just making him an offer outright. Some hail Gervonta Davis as the face of boxing, that he has usurped Canelo Alvarez on the premise that the Ryan Garcia fight sold over 1 million pay-per-view buys. Well, if he is the face of boxing, the onus is on him to make the offer.
Devin is a free agent. The Lomachenko fight was the final fight of his top-ranked deal.
So if you really want him, go and get him, though. Don't confuse what Calvin Ford might want with what Gervonta Davis wants. For the longest time, Calvin Ford claimed that he wanted Gervonta Davis to fight Vasyl Lomachenko, but alas, he never got around to it.
That's saying that just because Calvin Ford says that he wants a certain fight for Gervonta, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. That doesn't even mean they're going to pursue it.
Because for all his talk about wanting a Vasyl Lomachenko fight, when did they actually pursue a Vasyl Lomachenko fight? Now Calvin is saying they want Devin Haney, likely because Devin looked very human in the Lomachenko fight. Most of the boxing world thinks he lost that fight.
All right, make him an offer.
You're the cash cow. He's a free agent. Get the deal done. If you really want it. That's if you really want it, though we all know the Isaac Cruz rematch is a far easier fight to make that's less expensive. You don't have to pay Isaac Cruz the same way you have to pay an undisputed champion.
Isaac Cruz doesn't make the same money as Devin Haney.
I want to make that abundantly clear. Whether you think Gervonta Davis beats Devin Haney or Devin Haney beats Gervonta Davis,
right.
Whether or not you think Vasyl Lomachenko deserved to win or Devin won legitimately, irrespective of all of that, the fact of the matter is, Devin gets paid more fight by fight than Isaac. So if Gervonta wants to get him in the ring, he's got to pay to play.
If he's boxing on a budget, then go ahead. Schedule the Cruz rematch. That's what most people are expecting you to do.
Because it's the cheaper alternative.
It is.
Because Calvin said he wants that fight too.
So if he does, don't expect to do with Isaac Cruz what you did with Ryan Garcia.
I expect to see a dramatic drop in sales if that turns out to be Gervonta's next fight in the fall, once he's out of house arrest. It has been reported that Canelo Alvarez versus John Ryder did an estimated 450,000 pay-per-view buys. 450,000. That's close to 500,000 with a no-name.
Do you think Gervonta Davis can do that fighting Isaac Cruz for the second time?
You think he's gonna sell 450,000 pay-per-view buys with that fight? Is that what you think?
Got a better chance of hitting that number fighting Devin than fighting that guy again.
But let him fight Isaac Cruz. Let him fight Isaac Cruz in the fall and see if he comes anywhere near the number he did with Ryan Garcia, because then it will be painfully obvious who was the driving force for that fight.
Who really sold that pay-per-view?
Because Gervonta had been on pay-per-view 5 times before that. He never saw a number like that. Never came close.
But go on. Fight Isaac again, Mr. Cash Cow of Boxing.
Just in keeping with the theme of news at or around these weights, Ishmael Barroso wants a Romero rematch. They said I was a grandfather, but the old man beats anyone. He wants a second fight. I don't know how likely he is to get it when O'Hara Davies is supposed to be in the queue ahead of him, and Rolly himself, he wants to fight Ryan Garcia.
He doesn't want to fight either O'Hara Davies or Ishmael Barroso.
We feel a little upset. Unfortunately, it was an injustice that they did to me and the team, because it was not 2 days or 2 months. We had been working for this opportunity for a long time, but we hope, God willing, a solution will come. A rematch. Something that will make us fight with him again, Barroso told George Ebro. When I saw that the referee was Tony Weeks, I felt happy. I was happy because he was a referee with so much experience, recognized worldwide. I told myself that I was proud to be there with him as a referee, but it's the worst decision I have in my career. We're ahead on the cards. When I hit him, it hurt. For me, the victory was just a matter of time.
I told you ahead of the fight what that fight was really about, that by hook or by crook, they were going to put that belt in Rolly's hands. I didn't expect Ishmael to be as formidable as he was, but the outcome was what I expected.
The promoter, Laura Ching, my manager, William Ramirez, and my trainer, Osmiri Fernandez, have sent letters demanding certain things from the WBA and Las Vegas. We hope that a solution will come. Those who know about boxing saw a badly stopped fight, an injustice against me, and unfortunately...
What's that, Cool G-Rap?
Bigger robberies on bigger stages than that one haven't had the outcomes, the decisions, overturned. Thus, Ishmael Barroso's cries for justice and cries for a second fight may fall on deaf ears.
He ain't got the juice. He ain't got enough money behind him.
The controversial outcome of Ryota Murata versus Hassan Endam, the WBA themselves did order a rematch, and in the Madramov versus Sorrow fight, the first one,
Right.
due to the outcome, they did order a second fight, but given what's going on...
Yes, in theory, the WBA could order Rolly to fight this guy again.
So because they already have O'Hara Davies in the queue, and because Rolly Romero himself could bring them some hefty sanctioning fees with a Ryan Garcia fight, a Ryan Garcia voluntary title defense, what are the odds? What's the probability that Ishmael gets another crack at the apple?
Cynical, I know, but what do you expect? This is boxing.
Honestly, I expected a better Rolando Romero, a stronger puncher who hit and pounded hard, but the rounds went by and I didn't feel it. Some punches he did land on me clearly, but I never felt the power of him the way people painted him out to be. I fought stronger boxers who hit harder than him, Barroso said. Our strength comes from God. For me, 40 is a shtick. And I think the Cuban tried to shtick in our fight. He saw what we are made of. People got confused. They said that I was a grandfather and an old man, but the old man is hungry and he beats anyone.
It's too convenient. The whole thing, the way it all happened. Puello all of a sudden testing positive for a banned substance, being stripped.
Puello was an unbeaten fighter, a pure boxer, a good one, whereas Ishmael Barroso at 40 years old, 3 losses.
On paper, you tell yourself that this is an easier assignment for a limited boxer like a Rolly Romero. Then he goes in there, looks the way that he looked, comes very close to losing.
Given everything he stands to make and generate opposite the ring Ryan Garcia, if they can make that fight, do you think they're going to gamble him losing to a 40-year-old Venezuelan fighter with 3 losses?
No.
I'm sorry, but Barroso's not likely to get justice here.
Tony Weeks waving the goddamn fight off for punches that Rolly wasn't even landing?
Is it not obvious to you already that by hook or by crook, their intention was to put that title in Rolly's hands? They've got plans.
That rhymes.
It's not going to happen, guys. They've still got O'Hara Davies to satisfy.
The Garcia fight represents a greater financial value than the both of those fights.
Wouldn't surprise me if he fights Ryan next. It wouldn't.
To that, 2-division champion Shakur Stevenson says, Rolly Romero is trash. He's a bum.
Harsh, I know, but this critique isn't coming from the spectators in what is this spectator sport. This is coming from a young unbeaten fighter, a 2-division champion going on 3.
Not me or you, not some content creator, not some armchair critic.
By and large, Romero's ability to separate his foes from their consciousness has been well documented, but despite knocking out the majority of his opponents, Stevenson isn't impressed with his skills and considers his words mendacious. Rolly is the biggest con man in boxing, said Stevenson during an interview with Say Cheese. I ain't gonna lie, dude can sell a fight. He's one of those dudes that can talk, but nah, Rolly can't fight. He's trash. He's a bum.
Oftentimes, the fans are lambasted for using words like tomato can and bum in reference to professional fighters, but those are the words that Shakur Stevenson chose to use when describing Rolly Romero, and he's just saying what we're all thinking.
Guy's a fucking bum.
He sucks.
Stevenson has a hunch that Romero isn't necessarily interested in facing the best fighters out there or actually winning, but instead, the former Olympic silver medalist believes that Romero is simply looking to fatten his bank account. With that in mind, Stevenson has learned to tune out all of the brazen trash talk Romero has levied in his direction. I'm on a high level of boxing. When a bum talking to you, you know he just wants a payday. He's just looking for a payday right now, and could be a payday with Gervonta Davis or Ryan Garcia, who Rolly mentioned by name, and Ryan seems happy to oblige him.
He doesn't want to unify titles with Regis Prograis or
his PBC stablemate, IBF champion Subriel Matias. Rolly's not interested in legacy. Rolly knows what his limitations are. Underneath it all, he faces certain defeat opposite the ring those fighters. He almost got beat by a 40-year-old man.
He knows. He's just taking advantage.
The advantage of being a content creator is that I can say what the media won't. I can say exactly what I'm thinking, and what I think is that if anyone really is to blame here, it's the people that rigged that fight. It's not just Tony Weeks because somebody paid him, and I believe somebody did.
It's not just Tony you gotta blame.
It's whoever wanted to put that title in Rolly Romero's hands, knowing that he wasn't deserving of a title shot to begin with. It's whoever pulled strings behind the scenes to see that guy crowned a champion.
And I'm confident that somebody did.
That boxing in America has become watered down enough that a limited fighter like Rolly Romero could see himself crowned a champion in this landscape, in what is one of the deepest divisions in boxing. That level of manipulation and chicanery knows no bounds and no shame. Are we expected to now look at him the same way we look at Regis or Subriel?
Ridiculous.
Because nobody does, and the only reason they put that title in Rolly's hands is because they're fattening him up for someone else. Maybe they do a Ryan Garcia fight. I don't know how they would do it. Ryan still appears to be with Golden Boy Promotions. Would he make a second trip to Showtime to do another?
Or would Rolly cross over to DAZN?
There's money in that fight. I'd be lying to you if I told you that there weren't.
Great motivator.
Money talks. And if the powers that be can find a way to put Rolly Romero in the ring with Ryan, they will, because there's money in it.
There's no money in justice for Ishmael Barroso, a 40-year-old Venezuelan fighter with no following and 3 losses. There's no money in his career.
An inconvenient truth that affects what shapes the boxing landscape. It's all about what brings in the dollars.
Sometimes that leads to this sport seeming less and less like a sport and more like a scripted drama, to where the outcomes are preordained.
Before the opening bell rung, the outcome of that fight was already decided.
I mean, there's angling, and there's always angling. There's always a level of angling, but then there's this, and this is insane.
A fighter like Marvin Hagler almost immediately comes to mind. How many fights he had to fight in before he even got the sniff for a world title, and how many more he had to go through before he actually won one. And then you look at a guy like Rolly and ask yourself, what has this sport become?
This is what passes for a world champion now.
You can bet your bottom dollar that the people at PBC and Showtime are going to prop him up as one. That's how they're going to bill his fights, as world title fights against the world champion.
Is that what he is?
Or is he just a guy that they're fattening up for someone else? Maybe Ryan Garcia? Maybe Gervonta Davis? They want him to have that option.
There's always something going on behind the scenes.
Though if nothing else, you know, it was their intention to put that title in Rolly's hands by any means necessary.
A fighter of such limited ability.
He doesn't have a big following. That fight with Ishmael Barroso barely got any eyes on the Showtime platform.
So what's this about?